to Solar Power World, Solar Speaks Live at Intersolar North America 2015. It is powered by Unirac. We're in the Unirac booth here. And I'm Kathie Zipp, Managing Editor of Solar Power World magazine. And today we're speaking with Alissa Jean Schafer, Communications and Policy Manager at the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, or SACE. And Alissa holds a master's degree in communications from Grand Valley State University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And she has put this to good use in several marketing positions in the solar industry. So we're very excited to have her here to talk more about the importance of solar education and workplace development. So thank you very much for being here, Alissa.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Sure. So can you start off by telling me how you got into the solar business and just more about the work that you do at SACE?
Sure. Well, I actually started out in building materials, and that was where I really learned the importance of sustainability and taking care of the environment. And from there, it really transitioned pretty organically into solar, and I've worked in solar in a couple different capacities, from components to installation to education, and now I'm at SACE. So doing solar communications and policy, I work with both the communications team and the policy team, and we do a variety of things really, but focused on policy, making clean energy choices, promoting that in the community, public outreach, as well as working with industry members and kind of looking at the whole spectrum of clean energy choices with a really big focus on solar.
Wonderful. So to learn a little bit more about that, can you give us an overview of the regulatory environments of the states that you cover? So like especially Florida, which I know is ironically a sunny state that often feels that it doesn't have solar-friendly policies.
Sure. Okay, well there's a lot in that question. So SACE covers the southeast region, and that includes generally the Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida. And it's really interesting because each state really has its own unique regulatory either barriers or positive things that are going on. For example, Georgia just recently passed the PPA bill, whereas North Carolina and Florida, PPAs are still illegal. So the states, you really see a wide range of regulatory environments, even though they're in such a small geographic area. So it's a really interesting thing to see and work in the different states. Florida especially, you mentioned, so you said it feels like it doesn't have good
I know a lot of
policies.
people,
well, it's funny because it's not that it feels like it doesn't, it actually doesn't, like point blank. It has nothing to do with emotion. It just doesn't have, it doesn't have a renewable portfolio standard. It doesn't have an effective resource planning. It has tax issues, and PPAs are actually illegal there, as I mentioned. So that is one of the focuses that SACE is trying to work on, to remove some of those barriers. And they're doing it through a few different things, but one of the exciting ones that they're working on right now is the Floridians for Solar Choice ballot initiative. SACE is one of the founding and supporting organizations in that. Is currently, I think the current number is at least 45 bipartisan coalition members, but yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. The regulatory environment in Florida is not supportive to the solar market as a whole, and that's one of the things that we're working on.
Oh, wonderful. I know a lot of people are probably happy to have you working on that. And I know a lot of this goes back to education, which I know is still a major challenge in the industry. So can you share some examples of how SACE educates the public and others involved in solar's growth, officials, and is there anything that the rest of the industry could learn from when it comes to solar education?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that education is so important, and the Floridians for Solar Choice ballot initiative that I just mentioned is actually a really good example of how we've taken the concept of solar and solar education and really shared it with the general public. And if you look at the initiative, it's really become this grassroots effort where we have volunteers, we have different coalition members, and the way they're all working together to really educate the public about how solar works and how it could work at a much greater level in the state of Florida than the status quo right now. And just to see people respond to that and the general public support it and realize, okay, this is the potential that solar has, especially in the state of Florida, any state, but this example particularly pertaining to Florida, just to see that and to see the public, the general public, the different city commissioners, different politicians, just across the board really get on board with that, and it's because it's an educational outreach. If you look at the facts of solar in the state of Florida, I mean, it's not, you know, trying to make something up or figure out, well, maybe this could work. It's no, you have science, you have economics, and it's not too hard to convince them once you present them with the facts. And so then it just becomes a conversation that really makes a lot of sense.
So more specifically, so how do you do that? I mean, do you have like specific events that you have panel discussions on, or how does that education come across?
Well, we use a lot of different mediums for that.
Okay.
Part of it is just person-to-person conversation. So, for example, if we have a really strong coalition of volunteers, and if you have a volunteer and you're able to educate them about the current issues and about the initiative, that volunteer then becomes an ambassador of solar. So in a very informal way, they're able to have really informed conversations with their friends, with their coworkers, and kind of spread that conversation and spread that education in a really natural way.
Sure.
We use a lot of more structured outreach as well, giving presentations for different groups, doing coordinated blogs and social media outreach and things like that, and even here at Intersolar, you know, setting up panels and having more of the traditional structured conversations. But it's been interesting to see kind of a combination of that, how it kind of comes full circle. And today with the internet, it's easy to see what people are responding to, what they're talking about on the ones that are, you know, very structured and you can really see it, and then on the more personal side where you have people just talking about it on their Facebook walls and things like that.
Wonderful, and that's really something anybody can do. I mean, you guys do in a very structured way, but yeah, just on social media or talking with you know, your neighbors and friends, it really can help spread education about solar. So, so one last question. So to educate the public, you have to have a skilled and qualified workforce. So what tips can you share for solar businesses when it comes to workforce development?
That's a great question. I think it's a very important question. I'm sure anybody in the solar industry, you, me, anybody else, has either seen or heard of instances where sometimes we do the bare minimum just to get the job done. And you know, solar is a younger industry, so we have the opportunity to really set the bar high when it comes to always performing at a really high level, having high quality standards. And we have to take that responsibility on ourselves to set that standard and to keep it there. And for solar companies, they have a unique opportunity to really set that standard within their own group of employees and as they're bringing people on. And you can do this in a variety of ways. I mean, there's certifications, there's continuing education, there's safety training. There's a lot of things that you can actively pursue and make sure your whole team is always up to date and taking that extra step to continue that.
Yeah.
It's not just, well, here's an orientation into solar. I mean, something new in solar is happening, I mean, on a monthly basis, I would say. And it comes down to just staying on top of that and taking the initiative to do that, especially with things like building codes too. Those are always changing too. So it's important, I think, just again, to think about setting the bar high and taking that extra initiative to keep it high and hold each other accountable as opposed to taking the shortcut or going about it that way. At SACE specifically, we have to make sure that we're always keeping an eye out for what's developing either in the industry or in policy. Like if we just sat back and were like, well, we know how policy works, I mean, that would be a very outdated understanding very quickly. So we have to always be like, okay, what's happening today? What are the conversations today? What are the advancements? You know, what is coming up? So it's an ongoing effort.
Right. Yeah, the industry definitely is always changing. And I know that can be challenging, but also exciting. So do you like that about solar, all the changes and it's always exciting? Or what do you like best about being in the solar industry?
Well, I do love that it's always changing. I mean, there's always something new to learn. I also love the solar industry because I get to work with people like you. I mean, there's a lot of really wonderful people in the industry. There are wonderful people in
this industry,
and I think that's because the solar industry, it's about having a real impact on both communities and the environment. I mean, solar, just in the last few years, it's created so many new jobs. It has the potential to create so many more. It's good for the environment. I mean, you're able to provide energy equality to low-income households. There's so many positive, just all-around good things about solar, and so I feel really privileged to be able to be a part of that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a feel-good element, but it's also, this is a feel-good element that really makes economic sense, it makes environmental sense, and we're really working towards a sustainable future. So that's pretty awesome.
Right, we're all advocates, and we're all fighting for a result that we're very passionate about, and so I agree with everything you said. It's a fun industry to be in. So. Well, I think that wraps up this edition of Solar Speaks Live at Intersolar North America, and I do want to thank Alissa one more time for being with us. Thank you, Alissa.
Thank you.
You did great. And be sure to keep stopping by through the show. Oh, this is the last one, isn't it? Okay, well, this is it. Thank you, everyone who has watched Solar Speaks. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you enjoyed it, and we might return to one of these future trade shows. So thank you so much, everyone.